Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the book Refuge and welcome to another recommendations video. Not feeling my hair today. I hate when I get these little wispies and you can't straighten it or do anything and it just causes you problems. But really recently I just did a video about all my favorite books series to binge, and I wanted to make a counterweight to that because sometimes you don't want to be committing to 5, 10, 15, maybe crazy 23 books in a series if you're reading a paranormal. Sometimes you just want to be able to hit it and quit it, get in, get out, get your jollies off and leave. And I wanted to provide you with some options for that. So I have 10, these are all going to be contemporary ones. It's really hard to do this with other genres, and even some of these may have crossover characters, but I think I did pretty good picking all books that don't. I think I did a good job doing that. Again, there are some contemporary series that are even like standalone series, but since I'm someone who once I meet characters, I need to read the entire thing, that doesn't really float my boat. So yeah, that's enough explaining. The only thing I'll say else before, if you like getting book recommendations, number one, I have playlists upon playlists of all my recommendations. Recommendations is a main part of my channel. So go ahead and subscribe, click like for this video, leave a comment as you are watching about which ones you have read, which ones you're interested in, and I'm going to get started with my long rambling explanations because that's what I do here, right? So first we're going to start with the one that kind of inspired this, and two caveats with this one. First off, this one already breaks the rule that I just said because I thought that this was going to be a standalone book when I was making the list. I make a lot of these decide what my videos are going to be earlier in the month, and then I film them when I got time. And so I quickly learned that there is going to be a companion book to this about a different character in the book, but currently it is a standalone because there's not any more out, so let's go with that. But it's actually the book that inspired me to make this video, so I didn't want to cut it even once I found that out, and that's The Roommate by Rosie Danon. I'll just show this quickly because the light, I have a very slim time of light when I can film at my desk, and my desk is the most comfortable place to film. But this book is the new shiny thing on the romance circuit, right? Or whatever that's called, the romance circuit. Jeez. But it is a book about this rich girl who she follows her best friend slash man that she really wants to be with. And I mean, I wouldn't even say really, I would say that their families think they should be together, but he's kind of doing the rebel boy road and has a band, and so she moves across the country to California to be with him, only to the day that she gets there to the house that he bought, he is leaving on a tour with his band, and she's kind of just like, what the fuck, dude? Not only is he moving her into this house and then ditching her for this tour, he also finds her a roommate off of Craigslist. And that roommate is Josh. Our girl's name, what's our girl's name? Clara. Our girl's name is Clara. And this roommate, Josh, is a porn star. Very quickly into the story, Clara finds this out because Josh is actually very popular with the ladies because of the certain style of adult entertainment that he creates. And so Josh is just so interesting because even though he's this guy who, he had kind of the classic story where he was down on his luck and he's really good looking and got tapped to make these films, he is still pretty awkward with women because women that he's not being paid to be with or paid to be there with him, he doesn't have a lot of experience with them because he wouldn't want to deal with all of the stress that could bring a partner to be in this job and do that. So he's only ever dated other women who he was set up for either PR reasons or he was filming a lot of films with, specifically this one woman named Naomi, who he wants to get back with her for his career. So Anyway, there are so many cute things about this book, and then there are also some really deep things as well. Number one, it was really cool to see a guy in the industry, because I had read books before, whether it's like usually escorts. I always like seeing the male perspective on these, because especially when I think we think of like men are the ones purchasing it, to get a look at the men who are providing it and the women who purchase it is very interesting. And that is kind of a look at what this book is, because this book also has a, trope I really like, where it's, the hero literally has a lot of experience for this. It isn't just word of mouth. I mean, she can look him up and see it. Clara doesn't know a lot about her sexuality, hasn't ever looked into it. So that's something that Josh helps her find, as well as when Josh gets put in a tight spot because of some industry issues. Clara says, you know what, the things that you were telling me, there's a lot of women who would appreciate it. You should see about providing a service where you teach women some of these things about themselves. And for that, because that would be, not great if, even though he knows a lot of things about the woman's body, if it was only coming from his mouth. And that's when we bring in his ex-girlfriend, Naomi, who can provide the women's perspective. So that is the basic overview of The Roommate. It is awesome. It's really sexy. It's pretty funny. And then there's going to be another one that's about Naomi, which I am super excited for. And again, didn't know about before I made the list, but for now, The Roommate is a standalone. And I think it works really well without the standalone. There is the only way that I had a hint that there might be something more, and it was more because I wanted there to be more about it. And then when I found out there was, I was like, oh my God, is because Naomi, who this character could be set up to be someone who was an obstacle to the relationship between Josh and Clara. It's very clear that this is a very complex woman, and she's not being painted as just, a woman who's there to ruin it. She is definitely there to be a help and an asset to them. So it was great. I highly recommend The Roommate. I'll show it one more time just in case you haven't seen it all over Bookstagram and everything. And it's really fun. I think this is a great picture of it too. Josh is really tall, hunky, but he's kind of an awkward duck, and surprisingly, still a cinnamon roll. When I make my updated cinnamon roll list, Josh is definitely going to be on it, because he's just not the guy that you would think you would see for this. So I love that. Next up, we're going to talk about a couple Penelope Douglas. I have my two favorites of hers that are both standalones. So I have Birthday Girl. I know. But it feels like it's been a hot minute since I've talked about her. But this is a book that when I first read it, I talked about it nonstop on my channel. This was one of the first significant age gap books that I'd read, that I was aware that I was reading. That's something that's fun about Booktube, is seeing what books were kind of the first for me. That could be a cool thing to see, which books were my first in everything. That'd be fun. But this is about Jordan and Pike. And so Jordan is 19, and her boyfriend get kind of kicked out of the current living situation they have. And so they move in with her boyfriend's dad, who's Pike. He had his son with, I don't know if they were married, I can't remember if they were spouses or whatever, but they had him when they were only 17 or 18. So I think he's 38, so he's double her age. And there's no cheating in this book. I really very, very, very rarely ever suggest a book with cheating in it. This is a case of her boyfriend is kind of spiraling in some different ways, and so very soon after moving in with Pike, who there is some attraction because he's pretty hot, he works construction, and he's pretty sexy for 38-year-old. I have some friends who are 38 at this point, so that age isn't crazy far away from me anymore, which is crazy. And Pike, realizing that Jordan would have nowhere to go when his idiot son breaks up with her, he's I don't want you to stay with my son because you're worried about getting kicked out. I see that he is being destructive. You can stay here. So that's kind of set up. And then now, without the obstacle of the son / boyfriend in the way, some things start to happen between Pike and Jordan, and it's Penelope Douglas. It's super steamy. It's super fun. To me, this is one of her lighter books. So it was my first Penelope Douglas, and then when I started reading some of her other books, they were, okay, nothing's too dark for me, but at the time, they were really dark for me because I read this book a year and a half, 2 years ago at that time. So it was a lot for me at that point. That's not how it is anymore, but back then, this book was a lot for me. So, this is great. Then the other Penelope Douglas, which doesn't get talked about as much, but it is also an age gap, and I really love it, is Misconduct. So this one was actually published with a contemporary publisher. It was published with Penguin by her. And so this is probably one of her least crazy, least taboo books. This is about a 26-year-old teacher and a 36-year-old like father of one of her kids. So this is about Easton Bradbury. She is a teacher, and then she meets Tyler, who is the parent of one of her kids, and he's also going to be I think he's a senator or congressman, something. And he and Easton have kind of a conflict about some of the things she's teaching in class or how she's choosing to teach in class. And so they end up having a parent-teacher conference, and right away we see some really dominant traits from Tyler, and their interactions have a lot of sexual tension in them. There's one where she confronts him in his boardroom in front of people, and they both get like really turned on by it. And then he comes to visit her at her classroom to talk about it, and they end up kind of like, he finger bangs her on her desk. That happens. There's also, she has a lot of trauma. She had a stalker previously. And her parents are dead. She lives with her brother. I don't know if he's her twin or he's just a couple years older. I can't remember. But she has a lot of trauma from that. And I don't know, it was just really great. He has a lot going on. Their relationship is taboo. Not really, but it needs to be secret because what he's running for, he can't be seen with his son's teacher. Also, he's working on the relationship with his son. His son previously lived with the mother most of the time. This was a teen pregnancy as well, and he was not been a good father up until this point, so he doesn't want to ruin that relationship he's creating with his son by sleeping with his teacher. So there's drama in that regard, but love it. And then the next one I want to talk about is a TL Swan. This was fun to pick. So TL Swan has actually only 2 books that are complete standalones. The rest, all connect somehow. I'm actually planning to do a deep dive on TL Swan because I realized that I have read all her books at this point, and it made me, super excited. But the one that I read, it was a new release this year and is one of, this book has so much going on, and it is problematic. I don't use the word problematic a lot, but I understand why there's a lot of conflicted emotions about this book. But to me, it is a situation that I've wanted to read for a long time, especially with sexuality being something that is more easily talked about and open. I thought it was really brave that the author made this book. So it's Our Way by TL Swan. Her covers are always very hot. They're definitely made for the female gaze, as most romance novels are, but yum. There's active saliva in my mouth looking at this guy. He's so beautiful. Okay, so this book is about Nathan and I forgot what her first name is. Let me just check. Eliza. This is about Nathan and Eliza. All right, I'm gonna put this down again. They've been best friends for 10 years. He is a doctor. She is a nurse. I think she's a nurse. And they both start at a hospital at the same day. And they meet in the lunchroom. And they're kind of talking and flirting. And he makes it known that he's gay. But they end up being best friends. So, because she kind of asked him out, and he's like, honey, I'm into dick. I don't want to go on a date with you. And she's like, who said I want a dick? Which she totally wanted dick. she's like, well, how about we just have a friend date because I'm new here and I need a friend. And he's like, okay. So they become best friends, and they've been best friends for 10 years. And they have a very interesting friendship to the point where, like, there comes the point that we're at currently. They are both single, and they basically live at each other's houses. They even share the same bed a lot of time. He has a super big bed, and so when she stays over, she sleeps in bed with him. There's never been anything sexual, but she's always been attracted to him. I mean, you saw the picture. He's beautiful. And then they're planning their yearly vacation together, which Nathan always takes her on a vacation every year. Great friend. Wish I had one of those. And they go to do their shopping together. And she tries on a bikini, and Nathan gets a boner looking at her and put on her bikini. And he freaks out, and so he actually starts going to therapy, which that's an aspect of this book that is amazing because we get to see a lot of different aspects of therapy in this book. But he goes because he's like, why? I've never been attracted to a woman before. And not only that, it's my best friend and I can't be getting a boner around her. And so he goes to a therapist. And like I said, we get to see kind of like a good therapist and like, I don't want to call this person a bad therapist because he's really only listening to the things that Nathan is telling him, and it's like Nathan won't take any of the advice he gives him, and so then it's like, okay, we'll try this. And I personally think that it was the therapist like not knowing what else to offer, and so the option that he gives is not great. But anyway, Nathan, is really nervous about how to broach this. He doesn't want to ruin their friendship, not knowing that Eliza's been attracted to him since the beginning and even still like fantasizes about him. She's just like given up on it because he's gay and there's nothing there. And so this book has a lot to do with about like Nathan's sexuality and not wanting to be put in a box. And I'm going to spoil this part just because I want like you to know about it if you're interested. He decides that he's pansexual. So this book, from what I've heard from some people, that it was interesting representation, but then I haven't really heard anyone if it's like bad, and I haven't heard a lot from people who maybe actually are pansexual. But to me, from what I know of how that is categorized and the people, like how that's seen in the community, I feel like it is still, because it's TL Swan, it's still like a darker, more twisted style of stuff. But I was so into it because I've always had one, whether it's someone who's bisexual or just whatever combination you want to be, I find it so attractive, the trope that like, I've never been attracted to blank except for you. Whether that's messed up or not, I don't care. I do believe in like soulmates. So one of the things the therapist says that I think is really great is at one point he's like, your heart is in love with this person. And because you have a more like open sexuality, maybe your body is just now catching up. But your heart, you love this person and you know that they're right for you. And now your body's responding to that, no matter who you used to think that you were attracted to. So I really resonated with that. And no matter how other parts of this story are told, like that is something really powerful that I took away from the story is like, it doesn't matter always like what we think is conventionally attractive or what we think we should be with. Sometimes people just cross those boundaries. And so that's what I loved about Our Way. Yeah, TL Swan writes big books. Some people would say that it's too much, but I usually fall so heavily in love with her characters, just so deep in, that I don't care that they're this big. In fact, I'm glad that they are. So anyway. And also, like, the writing's pretty big on the pages. I think in, like, the, in the Kindle, yeah, it's still pretty big, but it's amazing. I love her books. Sorry, I'm just staring at them a little bit. Okay. All right, so let's continue. Now let's go to a bit of a happier one, but it's also a Friends to Lovers, and that is Not So Nice Guy by R.S. Gray. So I've only recently started reading R.S. Gray, which is fine. There are billions of books out there for me, and I can't get to every author all the time. But this is someone that one of my best friends has been harping on for a while. I have a best friend from high school that we still talk about books all the time, and I hold her very dear to me, and she loves R.S. Gray. R.S. Gray has a bunch of her books on, or did, slash, I don't know where they'll be now, but was on Audible Escape. And so I was looking for like short, quick contemporary romances to listen while I'm working that I don't have to pay too much attention to. And I've listened to a lot of them. Another thing I like about her is that she has such a wide range. Like, if you don't like one of her books, you may love the next one. Like, I've read at this point, I think 8 to 10 of them, and like 2 of them will be in my top romances, and one of them I gave a 2-star and I fucking hated it. But I just love that she's so versatile and she tries any trope. There's every combination of story and there's every combination of personality. Like, none of her books just like fit into a slot, which I just love. It's great. So Not So Nice Guy is about 2 best friends who are both teachers, and they both have the hots for each other. They've been friends for about 5 years. I think, again, when they both started at this school. And they both have had significant others at some point. And now for the last like year, they've both been single. And again, they're spending a lot of time together. They have weekly like West Wing nights where they watch the West Wing together. People at school think they're dating because they're best friends and they're always talking. And then a new teacher starts, and our female lead is giving her a tour. And she asks if that hot hunk over there is dating anyone. And she says, no, he's single. And so, like, everyone in the teacher's lounge who's there is like, oh, we thought you guys were together. So then all of these single teachers start hitting on him. And he's a little bit annoyed, even though, like, she told the truth. But he's like, dang it, I've been waiting to make my move on her, and she just made me, like, fair game for everybody. This is also really cute. Our hero has some very supportive parents, and his parents want him to make a move on her. Like, she's come to their holidays before, and they love her, and they're like, why are you taking so long to get with her? You need to be with her. It needs to happen. And I love that. I love meddling parents when they're meddling, like, to get people together. It's so cute. But anyway, he actively starts to pursue her, and she's scared. And she's hesitant in the realistic ways. And also they're nervous about their school has a non-prioritization policy, and that leads to the conflict. And I say conflict because this book was fun, as in there's a conflict early on where she doesn't, she's afraid to make a go of it. And he's like, girl, just give us a chance. Like, please, I know that you're perfect for me. It's not going to end. And, there's that conflict, but that doesn't drag on forever. Okay, it doesn't drag on forever. There is a different conflict that I thought was so cute and clever, and I can't tell you and spoil it, but it was adorable, and it's what made me give this 5 stars, and I'm recommending it to you now. So, Not So Nice Guy by R.S. Gray. Highly recommend this. Friends to Lovers was adorable. I loved it. So then I want to talk about The Ringmaster by Brianna Hale. So I have an up and down with Brianna Hale. My friend Tamika at Library of Tomes loves her, but even she would say not all the books are for everyone. She writes some really dark stuff, and then she writes just everything. Lots of taboo topics, lots of everything. This one actually isn't that taboo. It is an age gap, but it is probably the sweetest book I've read by her. I think I've read like 5 or 6 of Brianna Hale's at this point, and I will continue to read more. They're just not all a kink that I care to read or something like that. This one, not really a kink in this. This is about a circus. It's about a traveling circus set in the UK, but it is modern day. So that's something I didn't know just based on like what this cover model looks like. But this is not historical, like it's set today. And our hero is the ringmaster slash like owner, leader of this circus. And our heroine, she is being abused by her father. And the inciting incident of this story is that her father is beating her and like comes after her horse with a gun. And so she like rides her horse off into the woods, and our hero happens to be riding by on his horse back to the circus. He like went into town to do some business and walking back, and he sees this unfold. He sees the girl run on the horse and then the dude come after with a gun, and so he intervenes and invites her to join his circus. And so at the time, she's only 17 when this happens, and so he kind of like envelopes her into this circus, and they're just friends. This is actually a really, like, not really slow burn, but this is a slow burn story. Nothing happens till she's 18. We spend the first half of this book with her becoming part of the circus family, and that is just, it's so beautiful. She tries out some different acts she wants to be a part of, and what ends up really like bringing them together is he's really good at knife throwing, and so they're creating a knife throwing act where he's throwing knives at her, and so that really like ratchets up the time that they're spending together and things like that. So I believe this is a like 12-year age gap, because I think he's 30 and she's turning 18 in the book. But I didn't feel weird about this one at all. I mean, I rarely feel weird, but it was just, he gives her a home. And even then, when she's old enough and once everyone knows they have feelings, like, it's one of those where they're all like, come on, nobody has a problem with this but you. Like, make it happen. He doesn't want to ruin their friendship or make her feel like she doesn't have a home anymore. You know, he's like, if we tried and it doesn't work, like, I don't want you to have to leave or feel like you should leave because you have a home now. And I love that sentiment. It makes me so happy. It's great. So yeah, check out Ringmaster. If you haven't read a Brianna Hale, or you've been afraid to because some of her books seem too crazy, I think Ringmaster is a safe bet and a great bet. It's excellent. Then I want to mention The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. So they have quite a few standalones. I'll tell you right now, I liked their older stuff better. I liked their fan fiction. I liked Beautiful Bastard. I like them as a duo, so I like always want to try their books, but they're not as like steamy as I like anymore, and I feel like they've fit a little more into like the tropes that you see everywhere and aren't as unique with the twists, if that makes sense. However, a lot of people love The Unhoneymooners, and I get the appeal. The thing, like I said, I didn't like is that there isn't enough steam in it, and the situation that our characters end up in, I needed there to be more like hate fucking than there was, because this is an enemies to lovers. So this one, you probably did hear about this one as well, because most people have heard about the Christina Lauren books. This one is about this couple where his brother and her sister are getting married. So she's a twin to her sister, and he's the like older brother or younger brother, I don't know, to this guy. And they've just always rubbed each other the wrong way. They haven't got along. When they have the wedding, the sister is really thrifty, and so every part of her wedding came as like a giveaway or winning something. And so they won this like buffet for their wedding guests, but it's this like seafood buffet. And so Olive, she's allergic to shellfish, and then our hero, he just refuses to eat buffets. So good on him, because everyone who partaked of that buffet gets hideous food poisoning. And so the honeymoon that the couple is supposed to go on is non-refundable because it was won in a giveaway. And so her sister encourages her to take it because she looks just like her. So she takes her sister's license and then goes. And then the brother just like gives, because they look a lot alike and he has the same like last name as him and everything. So they go and they need to pretend to be married, and they share the honeymoon suite, which has other places to sleep. But this is basically a forced proximity in paradise, enemies to lovers. And there's a lot about it that is fun, including like some awkward situations, including randomly knowing people who are at the resort that they go to, which makes it sticky when they are pretending to be together. And there's just a lot of stuff that these people need to work through, because why did they hate each other? What happened that, you know, put this barrier between them? And I really liked getting to explore those aspects of it. Again, I just think that I wanted more steam out of it, but I definitely see why people liked this book, and I still wanted to recommend it as a standalone because it is, and it's hard to find now sometimes. Then I'm taking a bit of a darker twist, and I'm talking about All Things Burn by Jodie Slaughter. So this book came out earlier this year, and this is about a hitman and the woman who hires him. This is also an interracial couple. We have a black heroine, and she is being stalked by an ex-boyfriend who he's pretty wealthy and actually has like mob kind of connections. He's not in the mob, but he does some business for them. And our hero, well, our anti-hero, he is a hitman who also sometimes works for the mob. And so he will take these jobs. And our heroine, her cousin, has some things, and he has heard of this hitman before. And so he sees how things are escalating and that the stalker hasn't done anything that she can bring to the police, but it's bad, right? Like, she knows that when it's time to do something, they're going to be looking for him as her murderer and not, as the person trying to stalk her, which is scarily how it still works sometimes, because if you don't have the proof of that, if you don't have a way to do anything about it, there's nothing the police can do. But she knows it's going to happen. So she reaches out to this hitman, and he always makes people meet him. And so he meets her, and he's kind of instantly infatuated with her. And so he starts manufacturing times to spend time with her, saying that like she needs to come on the stakeout with him to gather information when he doesn't need to. And he will text her updates when he doesn't need to. And he gives her a pretty big discount on this one once he hears her story. And anyway, they just both, a relationship goes from there. So this one is, I wouldn't quite call it a thriller, but I would call it a dark romance with some angsty elements, right? Because this stalker is kind of a bad guy, and we do have some mafia connections going on. But it was fantastic. Like, it was so good. I can't wait to read more from Jodie Slaughter. And this is a really great standalone. This is on Kindle Unlimited. Do yourself a favor, read this book. Then I have another dark romance author, but one of her lighter, well, let me explain because there's some caveats. But I have, so Hello Stranger is one of Jade West's newer releases, and this book is heavy, but I wouldn't call it a dark romance because the romance isn't dark. The topic matter is heavy. So this book deals with, there is so many trigger warnings for long-term illness, for terminal illness, for like anxiety. This one is also about a doctor and a nurse. And it's about this couple that they ride the same train every day. And they're both reading books. And they do this for, I don't remember how long it is, but it is a significant amount of time that they're always on the train at the same time. And they'll show each other the books that they're reading. And one day she like loses her bookmark, and it's a bookmark that's really special to her. I think it's from her grandma. And he picks it up. And then the next day he's like, hey, this fell out when you left. And it gives them an intro to talk to each other. And our hero, he's really holding himself back. The main reason being that he has a terminally ill mother who he has been a caregiver for her for many years. I think he's in his 40s and his mother is in like her mid 60s. Like, she's not overly old, but she is pretty ill. This is also an age gap because I think our heroine is like 27 and he's like 40 or so. And so he doesn't want to get involved with anyone and like burden them with his mother, who will die soon. So not the greatest, but they are both very like, they're not timid people because he's just holding himself back. He's reclusive. and she's shy. But through their conversations on the train and some things they talk about, like, he actually ends up giving her the confidence without even knowing, because at this point they're only talking to each other on the train. He gives her confidence to leave her boyfriend, who just, like, is just kind of there. And she leaves the job she has to get a new job. And that new job she gets is actually at his hospital. And this is hard, too, because he works on, like, I can't remember what the floor is called, but he's working with terminally ill people as well. So he's just draped in the death and despair kind of thing. But through their friends and through their, like, she really, based on these things that he's told her before, like, one of the friends at work says, like, hey, we can see what's happening here. He's never going to make a move on you. Number one, he kind of keeps to himself that is as it is. And number two, you're kind of his employee / like you're someone who works with him. He's never going to make the first move. So if you want him, if you're into this, you're going to have to initiate it. So that was really cool to see. And then, yeah, like, I don't want to say too much more. Again, just know that there's grief in here, but the author, like, Jade writes so many of her books from, like, personal experience. So this book, once I found, like, number one, like, it hurts because there's a few different deaths we see in this book. We get to see how people deal with grief, which was really cathartic to me because I've lost a few people in my life this year. So I'm not recommending this one for everyone, but when I got done, there's a chapter in this book where a character gives us life advice because they're about to die, and the author, her partner, lives with a woman who was terminally ill. And so our author knew this woman, and this book was written as an homage to her, because our hero's mother, who's dying, is so great. Like, she's an amazing woman, and she has a bucket list that her son and his, eventual new girlfriend are helping her complete before she dies. And so, yes, this book will hurt you, and it will crush you, but it might inspire you as well. Like, it was so great. So it was so beautiful, and when I heard what the author's story was for writing it, I, like, cried even more, because you could just feel the love coming off of this book. And a lot of Jade West's books are about personal things to her, but they're, like, dirty, dark things that she's, like, working out on page, or, like, sharing a part of herself with you. And this one was a, like, raw emotional part, not just a, like, kinky fuckery part, which I also appreciate those books by her. But when I was trying to pick a standalone of hers that I would actively encourage people to, like, read if you want to experience that and, like, walk through that with someone, it's this one. Whereas I wouldn't just, like, tell anyone to read some of her, like, kinkier sex things, because they could be a lot. But, all right, so the last book I want to talk about is one that I just recently read, and it was time to hype it some more because I adored it, and that is Love in the Wild by Emma Castle. This is a Tarzan retelling. It's a Tarzan and Jane retelling. Our hero is now called Thorn, and he was left in the wilderness, or in the jungle, when he was like 3 or 4 years old, and he was raised by gorillas. And then this is also set in modern times. This is a contemporary romance. And our heroine is going with a group of people who are, like, studying and writing books, and she's there to, like, take pictures of this part of the jungle. And at the start of this book, they get attacked by poachers who don't want them to see what they're doing, and they're one by one all being murdered. And our heroine is about to be raped and murdered by them, and then Thorn comes in and kills them and takes her away and rescues her. And then it is their beautiful romance together. I love this book. It reminded me a lot of Transcendence, which was a favorite of mine just, like, last month, because the hero, doesn't know about, like, culture. He doesn't know about what's happening in the world. He barely knows how to speak. He does have the capabilities to talk and knows some things, but the more time he spends with our heroine, the more that he can talk. But he just has, the way of the jungle is how he looks at the world, and it's a beautiful, beautiful way to look at the world. And so spending time with him and watching their love grow between them is so amazing. And so there's the time of this book where they are just in the jungle together, and he's trying to keep her safe, and you know, he wants to mate with her because she's the first like woman he's seen who he's attracted to, and so she has to explain like, we don't just, you know, jump on people. There is no dubious consent in this book at all, not even a wink of it. It's one of those where like she explains and he listens, which that's probably part of it that like probably wouldn't be too realistic, because no apes wait for consent and that's all that he's seen. So he talks about like he wants to mate with her and wants to do that, but yet like listens to her about like how, you know, we would like date first. And so he's like, we spend time together and do things. Date? Have I taken you on a date? And so that's a big part of it. That's the whole thing's a fantasy, obviously, but is that he wouldn't just like take her, which we don't want that to happen. However, he's so instantly like, oh yeah, I need to wait for you to invite me, where I'm like, I feel like he wouldn't do that. But that's what's fun about like wild men who like aren't like that, because he's still very alpha and we get to see him be alpha in other ways, but with her he's so soft and sweet, and we get all those fun moments you'd imagine from like the Tarzan Disney film, where we get to see his interaction with the other creatures of the jungle and the gorillas who are his family, and it was so sweet and so cute, and it made me cry at some points, because the author, her kind of point of making it was the story of like, you can't have a Tarzan without Jane, like, and so to see the parts that she brings to the relationship and like how, you know, they become a functioning pair together, and I just really liked it. So a few of you have read it from my recommendation and you said you liked it too, and you should definitely read it. It's a great standalone. It was really happy. So there you go. There is my 10 standalone contemporary romance recommendations for you. Let me know which ones you've read. I, you know, tried to have a range of like trope and when it was written and stuff like that, but this was actually a hard list to put together. Making my bingeable list was much easier because I have a lot more series that I read, or trilogies or long series, than there is like standalone books. So thank you so much for watching this. I put out new videos 3 to 4 times a week. If you'd like to check out my Amazon store, I have lists of by trope and by when I'm reading the books if you want to check that out. And then, yeah, make sure you check me out in the next video. Have a great day. Bye.